Greetings, Remnant and online friends. I hope you have been enjoying Augustine's little sojourn into epistemology. Take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons so that you don't miss anything. These lessons can be enjoyed individually, but I do encourage you to take the whole course. I mean, after all, by the time you're done, you'll be glad you did, because you will know Augustine's Confessions better than all of your friends, and won't they be envious? You can find the entire confession saga on our Rumble account. After Augustine, we are planning on tackling G.K. Chesterton's Orthodoxy. So if you'd like to read ahead, you can go ahead and grab that. Make sure to get in on the ground floor for that study so that you can follow along each week, chapter by chapter. If you have been watching, then you know that we are in the middle of a great teaching, or rather in the middle of a great questioning about epistemology. Epistemology is the study of how and why we know things, and I've explained that in previous videos that you can go back and look for a better definition. I don't wish to belabor this topic any further than we already have. Like I said, see our previous lessons for further insights. So suffice it to say that understanding epistemology, or at least understanding the questions that epistemology asks of us, is helpful when trying to locate or understand the invisible God. I once asked a professor why everyone didn't love philosophy. I loved it the moment I first cracked open Plato's Republic. He responded, many in the class were hating it. He responded, "In order to understand wisdom, one must be willing and able to walk through insanity and survive to the other side. It is not for everyone." Unquote. Well, you had me at insanity, Prof. I really didn't understand that until I started to understand epistemology. I'd read Kant. It didn't seem insane. I enjoyed Plato. He didn't make me step into fairyland. But then I was introduced to the likes of Descartes, Hume, and Nietzsche. And it was at these madmen's feet that I witnessed the abyss that Nietzsche is so famously known for staring into. Understanding the philosophy of government is a very different thing than studying the philosophy of knowledge or the philosophy of being or ontology. I think, therefore I am. That's a very different path of wisdom than understanding the great need for a philosopher king like in Plato's Republic. The philosophy of thought, and of being for that matter, attempts to unravel the structure of the very tools that we use to unravel structure. In many ways, when we attempt to understand ourselves, it is like using a magnifying glass to better understand a magnifying glass. We honestly do not have the tools necessary to unravel or understand our own ability to unravel and understand. Knowledge feels like memory, doesn't it? Memory stores images. These images are never the things in and of themselves, but the images of the things that we actually encounter. For our minds and memories, the images stored are what really matters. They become the things in and of themselves to us within that strange reality that our reality suits feed into ourselves. Descartes, if I understand him correctly, begins to wonder if the hand he is holding onto his chair with, he looks at this hand and he wonders, is it real or just a figment of a fevered dream? He wonders, do other people exist? Does my hand really grasp things, and does it exist? How do I know anything? Especially the question, do I exist? How do I know? And at the end of the day, Descartes finds that the only thing he can be sure of is that he does indeed think. And if he thinks, then he must exist, right? Therefore, I think, therefore, I am. One of our greatest philosophers of all time is leery that he is actually sitting in a chair by the fire at all. That ought to startle you, right? We call minds like his great, and all philosophers glance wild-eyed around the room, hoping no one figures out the joke. Tenure is on the line, fellas. Keep thinking crazy stuff. I have found the methods of awakening that different types of people use. I found these methods to be fascinating. I have met a man who met Christ while working a classical math problem. He reached the logical end of the exercise and realized, with a life-changing realization, that God himself balances the equation. I have read of scientists who, at the end of the day and at the end of their own wits, confess that the only thing that makes any kind of sense in this universe is a creator slash designer, whatever they choose to call him to protect their own prides and egos. Follow the math of the Big Bang down long enough, and you will run into a wall. You will run into a mathematical wall. You will run into a logic wall. This wall is the wall that we call first causes. And first causes in any sphere of life, I believe, will lead you to God. Follow the path long enough, and you will come to the source. Since the source is responsible for creating us and everything else that we can think or even dream, in that moment, we run into an insurmountable wall. It's a mystery at that point. We cannot know what happens after that wall, but many of us hear our Lord and Creator moving around behind it, don't we? This really should excite you. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? Augustine travels down the road of epistemology, but all roads will eventually lead you to the narrow path. I'm not saying that there are many paths. I am saying that there are many road signs to the narrow path, and that these road signs can be found at the end of all human logic and all human reasoning. Pascal ran into God by running the odds against God. He was kind of God's bookie, aka Pascal's wager. C.S. Lewis met him in the glorious tales about gods and heroes from human literature throughout all the ages. My acquaintance met him at the end of a math problem. I met him while analyzing my own pride and ego as compared to others, and realized that they were all in the extreme. Which end will you find him? And when you do, will you walk the narrow path that you found? Or, as my professor might have phrased it, will you be able to step from the insanity back into the real? Will you be able to leave this world of shadows behind in order to live, dwell, and have your being in the fount of all life? Once you understand that God stands at the creative center of all things, you can enjoy learning everything in whole new ways. Again, Chesterton nails it with the quote I say every chance I get to say this quote. I love this quote. I can know all things through the things I do not know, unquote. Give wonder to God and gather wisdom from him. Gather wisdom, knowledge, and sanity unto yourself. What is God? Well, who knows? Can we understand God? If you think so, then you have a very sad definition of God, don't you? If you can define God, if you can build a little golden idol or calf to him, if you can explain him to everyone logically and efficiently, then you do not really have a God. You have a habit, an addiction, a pride problem, and a very poorly developed sense of the world around you. Perhaps you hit the wall and it was a mirror, and you confused yourself for the God that dwells in the invisible depths. Perhaps you ran into a black hole and you ran in despair, as Nietzsche surely did. Listen to how the psalmist communicates this deep truth to us. He sings, quote, "If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you," unquote. Anytime you approach the unknown, anytime you bravely face the abyss and call out, anytime you can have one foot in fairyland and the other foot on solid earth, you will discover God hidden there. Psalm 18:11 sings, quote, "He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky," unquote. Christianity thrives under persecution, and it thrives in darkness. God is not found in the wind. He's not found in the thunder or the earthquake. He's found in the still small voice that whispers the very moment you have faith enough to let go of understanding being and instead just decide to be. What we are about to read has a touch of insanity to it, and that's the beauty of it. May being exposed to it not only teach you how little we know, may it not only cause you to be shaken when you realize what a mystery box the human mind actually is, but may it also give you the courage in the heat of the storm, in the heart of the storm, to hear the voice from above deck calling out beyond that wall, "Peace, be still." And in that moment, may the chaos of your heart be filled completely with God and the source of all things. And in so doing, there find peace and love. No one can lead you there. The path is for your steps alone. Let's turn to Book 10. We're going to be reading chapters 15 to 19 today, and you can, of course, get your free copy from Project Gutenberg. But who would find it easy to say whether the memory retains them by means of images or not? I can speak the word stone or sun when the things themselves are not present before my senses. Their images are readily to hand in my memory. I can speak the words physical pain, but as long as I am not in pain, it is not present with me. Yet were its image not in my memory, I would not know what to say when, in the course of a disputation, I distinguished it from pleasure. I can speak the words physical health when I am physically healthy. The thing itself is with me, but were its image also not present in my memory, I could in no way recall what the sound of these words signified. Nor could sick people, when the word health was spoken, recognize what was said. Were the same image not held by the force of memory, even though the thing itself was not present in their body? I can speak the names of the numbers that we use in counting, but it is not their images, but the numbers they represent that are present in my memory. I can name the image of the sun, and this image is itself present in my memory. It is not the image of an image, but the image itself that I recollect. It is itself ready to hand when I search my memory. I can speak the word memory, and I recognize what I speak. And where do I recognize them but in my memory itself? Is my memory also present before itself by means of its image and not through itself? And what are the times when I speak the word forgetfulness and recognize forthwith the thing whose name I speak? From whence would I recognize it if I did not remember it? It is not the sound of the name that I mean, but the thing itself that it signifies. If I forgot that, what good would the sound do? There would be no way in which I could recognize it. When, therefore, I remember my memory, that memory is present before itself through itself. When, however, I remember forgetfulness, both memory and forgetfulness are present. Memory, by which I remember, forgetfulness, which I remember. But what is forgetfulness if not a loss of memory? How then can it be present for me to remember it, seeing as when it is present, I cannot remember it? But if what we remember we retain in our memory, and if, unless we remembered forgetfulness, we could in no way recognize the thing when we heard the name by which it is signified, it follows that forgetfulness is retained in the memory. Forgetfulness, then, is present to keep us from forgetting. But when it is present, we forget. And we are to understand from this that forgetfulness is not present to the memory through itself, but through its image. Since if it were present through itself, it would not make us remember, but forget. Who can pursue this argument? Who can comprehend how it is? For my part, O Lord, I am straining at this question and straining within myself. I am become a land of toil and much sweat. I am not now pondering the tracks of heaven, measuring the space between the stars, or seeking the foundations of the earth. It is I who remember, I, the mind. It is not so strange if what I am not is far from me, but what is closer to myself than I am. And yet the stores of my memory are not comprehended within me. since I cannot name myself without it. What then am I to say, seeing as it is beyond doubt that I remember forgetfulness? Am I to say that what I remember is not in my memory? Am I to say that forgetfulness is in my memory for this very purpose, that I do not forget? Either is utterly absurd. But what third alternative is there? How am I to say that it is the image of forgetfulness and not forgetfulness itself that my memory holds when it remembers forgetfulness? How am I to say this also, inasmuch as before the image of anything is imprinted on the memory, it is first necessary that the thing itself should be present for its image to be imprinted? It is thus that I remember the image of Carthage, or of all the places I have been. It is thus that I remember the faces of people I have seen and the reports of the other senses. It is thus that I remember physical well-being or pain. When all these things are present, my memory takes images from them for me to consider and turn over in my mind when I remember the things themselves. The images are present when the things are not. If, then, it is through its image and not through itself that forgetfulness is held in my memory, then it must have been present for its image to have been taken. When, however, it was present, how did it inscribe its image on my memory, seeing as by its very presence it erases even what it finds already recorded there? But for all this, I have no doubt that in some way, even if that way be incomprehensible and inexplicable, I remember the forgetfulness which buries in oblivion what we remember. Great is the force of memory. It is something to be shuddered at, my God, a deep and endless multiplicity. My mind is this thing. I am this thing. What then am I, my God? What manner of creature am I? A life unconstant, manifold, and utterly unmeasured. In the countless fields and grots and caverns of my memory, full beyond counting with countless kinds of things, I range through the images, as with all physical objects, through presences, as with the liberal arts, through mental concepts and records, as with my states of mind, with memory retains even when the mind is not undergoing them, though whatever is in the memory is also in the mind. Through all these things I range, flitting this way and that. I go as deep in as I can, and nowhere is there an end. Such is the force of memory, such is the force of life in a man that lives this mortal life. What then am I to do, my true life and my God? I shall transcend even this force which is called memory. I shall transcend it and press on towards you, sweet light. What are you saying to me? Through my mind, I ascend to you who remain above. I transcend even this force of mine, which is called memory, willing to attain to you where you may be attained, and cleave to you where you may be cloven to. Beasts and birds also have memory, for otherwise they could not get back time and again to their lairs and nest, nor to the many other things with which they grow familiar. For neither could they grow familiar with any things if not through memory. I shall therefore transcend my memory also to attain him who set me apart from the four-footed beast and made me wiser than the fowls of the air. I shall transcend even my memory, but where shall I find you, the truly good, sweetness, untroubled? Where shall I find you? If I find you but through my memory, I forget you. And how shall I find you if I forget you? A woman had lost a silver coin, and she took a lantern and sought for it. But had she not remembered it, she could not have found it. For when she had found it, how would she know whether it was the same one if she could not remember it? I remember myself losing and seeking and finding many things, and hence I know. For when I have been looking for something and people have said to me, is it this one or is it that one? I have kept saying no, until the thing I was seeking was put in front of me. If I could not remember that thing, whatever it may be, I could not find it even if it were put in front of me, as I could not recognize it. This is what always happens when we seek something and find it. But if it happens that something is lost to our eyes, but not to our memory, as with any visible body one might mention, an image of it is retained within, and we seek for the thing until it is restored to our sight. Nor do we say that we have found what was lost if we do not recognize it, nor can we recognize it if we do not remember it. The thing in question has been lost to the eyes, but is retained in the memory. How does one explain the fact that when the memory itself loses something, as it does when we forget, and we seek to remember, where do we seek, if not in the memory? And if in the memory something other than what we seek happens to be put in front of us, we reject it until the thing we seek comes along. Moreover, when it comes along, we say, "This is it," which we could not say if we did not recognize it, nor would we recognize it if we did not remember it. But there is no doubt that we had forgotten it, or had it not totally fallen out of our mind, but only in part? Do we, on the basis of the part that we have retained, seek the missing part? Does our mind perceive that it is not at any given point handling all that it is used to handling, and, hobbling along on the stump of its habit, demand the return of the missing part? It is as when we catch sight of a man whom we know or think of him, and having forgotten his name, seek for it. And we do not connect to him anything else that comes along, since we are not in the habit of thinking of it along with him. And therefore we reject it until the right name comes along. The faculty of recognition is immediately acquainted with it, and accordingly rests content. But from whence does it come to us, if not from the memory? For when we are reminded of one thing by another, it is from that thing that the other comes to us. But if it were utterly wiped out of our minds, we would not remember even if reminded. We have not, then, entirely forgotten. What we remember, we have forgotten. But what we have forgotten altogether, lost as it is, we cannot seek. There was a time in my life when I could not find God anywhere. I knew that I had forgotten him, but I remembered that I forgot, and that was my saving grace. Now I know nothing but Christ. The beauty and savagery of the cross holds within its intersection the source of all things. I enjoy teaching, but the truth is this: if I am to teach you anything, then I must teach you this, quote, "For I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and him crucified," unquote. Why? Because everything will become clear when you realize who it is that you do not know. And in that moment of exquisite loneliness, you will meet the lover of your soul. I think, therefore I am. I think Christ is King. Hail to the King.